Brian Fisher for Sports Illustrated here at Big 12 Media Days. Thrilled to be joined by Texas Tech head coach Joey McGuire. Joey, thank you so much for stopping by. And it's talking season. Does it feel like the season's about here?
I love the talking season. I saw that the other day of somebody saying that. It does. You know, whenever your media day kind of starts everything, that you know that you're really, really close whenever you come to Dallas and get to do this and get to talk about your football team. And everybody's excited. Everybody's undefeated right now. And there's a lot of excitement with this conference.
Well, a lot of excitement for this conference because it seems like every game is a bit of a coin flip.
Yeah.
How difficult is that for you as a head coach in terms of, hey, every week, you know you got to bring it?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think that's what makes the Big 12 so special. You know, you're playing against some great coaches, so you better have your team prepared. And then one thing that the Big 12 has been known for a long time, and this year I think it's at the same level, if not a higher level, but the quarterback position. You know, it seems like everybody has a quarterback this year. We're lucky to have ours back. And so I think it makes it really tough. You better be ready to go every week.
Well, we were talking earlier about your quarterback being on a little bit of a pitch count coming into the season.
Yeah.
How healthy is he? How excited are you for him to start fall camp?
Yeah, I'm really excited. You know, he just got back from the Manning Passing Academy. He loved that. They had some high praises for him. You know, he feels as good as he always tells me. He goes, Coach, I hadn't felt this good since I was a freshman in college. And so we're excited. He's had a really good summer, and we're closer and closer to where we can just totally turn him loose. I mean, he's making every throw. We still just keep him. I think he's probably like at 400 balls a week right now, but that increases. We're just trying to increase his volume to get him ready for camp.
Does that continuity help in terms of breaking a new OC, obviously a lot of new pieces through the transfer portal? Does it having that quarterback, though, back from a leadership perspective and on the field just help you so much? Yeah,
it does because, you know, we have two of our three starters coming back at receiver, so they know each other very well. You know, we have one of our tight ends back, and then we added some guys, of course, but, you know, that makes a big difference. And then he is such a big voice. I mean, he's a guy that has a lot of respect in that locker room. He's played through a lot of stuff. He's never complained. You know, and he's a guy that comes and has an energy every single day whenever he steps in the building.
Defensively, who's his opposite number?
You know, it's Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, whenever you talk about like how we go, it's usually how he goes. You know, he played a full year last year healthy. He led the Big 12 in tackles. He's the preseason defensive player of the year. So I think, you know, he's the guy, and he'll be the first one to tell you he's playing in front of a really deep defensive line, so that's only going to help him whenever it comes to playing linebacker.
You saw a couple of your transfer portal guys that came in during spring practice, a couple of others you haven't seen. Who's excited for you to get out on the practice field in fall camp? Yeah,
you know, I got to see him a little bit at the end of the year, but, you know, not in a lot of live scrimmage is David Bailey. But also, you know, we added Roy Alexander at the end of the spring, starting summer at receiver. You know, he was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. He's been great this summer and adds a lot of depth in that room because that's the thing. You know, this conference is so tough. You better have depth in every room because you're going to get banged up. This is a tough sport, and so that really helped us in that room of adding depth.
Well, I mean, is that the secret to winning some of those close losses that you had last year and flipping them into wins?
Yeah, I think it's big. I mean, two of our losses, you know, we had to start a left tackle and a different left tackle in both of those games. And then we moved our left tackle to left guard because we lost our left tackle against Washington State. So our left guard against Washington State. That's been the biggest thing that we did this spring. Beside Howard Sampson, who's a left tackle, all of our guys, you know, like our starting center played guard, our starting right guard played center. We really tried this spring to not only have depth in the number of guys we have, but also have depth in the positions that they can play.
What's been different for you as a head coach in terms of integrating a lot of those new guys? And do you feel like you're on a different, you know, level in terms of, you know, making sure that they've bought into the culture coming into the year than you were kind of initially taking over?
Well, you know, it is different from the standpoint you have a change every year, but usually you're talking about 10 years ago, it was your freshmen coming in, and you weren't expecting a lot of those guys to play.
Yeah.
You know, and now you're changing with guys that you expect to play, or you've missed the mark. You know, and I mean, we brought in starters. I mean, we brought in guys that we were expecting to start. the first thing I said in our very first staff meeting was our job, the X's and O's are going to happen because, that's what these guys love to do, talking about coaches and everything. Our job is to create this culture, and that's been the biggest thing for me that I've tried to do from the beginning of January 10th, whenever we had our first team meeting and going through camp, is to just bring this team closer and closer together.
We're about a week into the new revenue share area.
Yeah.
How weird is it for you knowing there's a number attached to your team?
Well, the one thing that I do appreciate is that there's going to be some guardrails around what's going on, and there's also going to be multi-year contracts, and there's going to be a clearinghouse whenever you're talking about different things. So I think the more structure we have in college football, it's only going to be better for the game.
How different is it for you, and what's been the messaging internally? I'd be curious in terms of, there's been a lot of talk about your program, a lot of dollar figures attached to your program.
Yeah.
How do you handle that internally with your coach staff and with your players?
Our first phase of the summer was no excuses. We said make the main thing, and that's whenever you step into the building, empty the tank. There's a standard, so that's the standard, and then be where you're supposed to be and be on time. That's what we focus in right now. Our second phase is why not us? We're getting closer and closer to the season, so that mind shift now, it becomes closer and closer to reality that we're fixed to start playing football. Got to stop talking about it, and we got to go do it. And we've got a great opportunity, and so why not us?
So why not you this year?
Yeah, that's the plan. I think this year is huge, not just for this year, but the future of Texas Tech, to continue to push us to a different level. We checked a lot of boxes whenever you're talking about revenue sharing. We have the best facility in the country. Now it's time to go. People will say, well, Tech's never played for a Big 12 championship. This is the team that we need to go do it.
With that, obviously, raised expectations comes some pressure. I mean, how do you deal with that internally?
Well, I'd rather be in this position than a position that which you're hoping and praying that anything can go right. Like there are teams out there that, if they can make a bowl, that's going to be an extremely successful year. And I'd rather be in this position where people are talking, and then us knowing that we have a very good roster and really good football players, really good men on this football team, that we have an opportunity. So it's all perspective, of what I'm not one of those guys that I'm trying to guard my job. My job is to win. That's why they hired me. And we put a really good roster together to do that. Now it's time to go do it.
If it wasn't roster building and NIL and revenue sharing, probably one of the bigger off-season topics has been the college football playoff. What are your kind of thoughts in terms of where it's at right now? And ultimately, what's the talk in the room with your coaches in terms of where you guys would ultimately like the playoff to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people. I go back. Number one, I think if you win your conference, you should be in, right? And then after that, we've got to figure out how exactly the next, you see the 5 teams in, and then you've got the 11, how that comes about. We've got to find the best way to do that, because I'm totally against automatic qualifiers if it's not all the way across the board, if you're not doing it. I mean, here in the state of Texas, they've been playing the playoffs for a long time, as long as I remember, and one district doesn't get more teams in than another district, but just because they say that is a stronger district. I played in what they call the District of Doom with Duncanville, DeSoto, Cedar Hill. Mansfield was a part of that. I was in a part, to where you had some really strong teams that went, at times you played in the state semifinals or in the quarterfinals against some of these teams, and another team we didn't get more teams in just because it was a tough district. I think it's really going to be interesting. I would love cross-conference games to get in, to get a qualifier in. Like if I'm third place in the Big 12, let's go play the third place team in the SEC to see who gets in. But I am in favor from the standpoint of, if you win your conference, you should be in the playoffs.
I mean, does that allow you to, at least the possibility in that path, does that allow you to kind of sell it to your team a little bit in terms of, hey, why not us? We can make the playoff nowadays. Yeah,
I mean, you know what's going to get you in. I know that you know if you win the Big 12, you know that you're going to get in, and then after that, man, you better, just like always, you better have the right wins and maybe even the right losses, which that happens a lot too. That you have the right losses that help you get into the playoffs.
perception-wise, do you feel like the Big 12 is in a good place? Do you feel like it should be better in terms of what you're seeing on the field and translating to that national perception?
I think it's such a tough conference. I'm one of these guys. I always go back to Bob Stoops, and Bob Stoops is a good friend of mine, and I don't want to. He said it, so I'm not putting him out there from the standpoint of, he said it in his book, and he said it a long time ago. We've got to stop saying that this is a tougher conference based on one or two teams. I'm going to always say it. The old Pac-12 just won the Big Ten and the Big 12 last year. And you're telling me that a patch on their jersey made them a better team than they were the year before? No, that's not it. It's, there's certain teams that drive so-called this conference is better. And I always will say if Georgia or Alabama, especially when Nick Saban, if they were in the Big 12, the Big 10, or the Pac-12, that would have been the so-called best conference, And I think we're playing a really tough conference. I think you got to be ready to play every single week. It's extremely deep, and it's even deeper this year because we got great quarterbacks in this conference.
So what has to happen for Texas Tech to wind back up here in Dallas playing for the Big 12 title?
Well, we got to stay healthy. Need to stay healthy at the quarterback position. I feel good about that room, but we need to stay healthy at the quarterback position. And then we've got to play really well on the road. We go to Utah right off the bat, and that's such a tough place to play. And so we've got to do a good job. We play at K-State, so we got to do a good job of playing well on the road.
I mean, your schedule, you have one of the tougher schedules in the league in terms of playing a lot of those other top-tier teams.
Yeah.
How do you kind of look at things in terms of the broader picture and making sure that guys are seeing that but also focus week in to week out?
Yeah, that's what we do. We always talk about focusing in on what we can control, and what we can control is us and how we practice and how we prepare for that week, and so that's what we're going to continue to do is, focus on that. And, right now there's no countdown clock to any team. It's actually counting down to fall camp, and it'll go from fall camp and then it'll start counting down to a team, and we'll focus on that team.
Who's the player on your roster that maybe we're not talking about a lot here at Big 12 Media Days, but we will be talking about a lot in the fall?
I brought him, and I made sure I brought him for that reason. Romello Height, it's absolutely it's almost criminal that that he didn't end up on some of these all Big 12 teams, whether it be, you go as deep as some of those as a fourth team, and that Romello Height is one of the best defensive ends in the country, is not being talked about. So I brought him here, to make sure that he had the opportunity to be a part of this, and I think everybody will be talking about him at the end of the year. I know the NFL scouts are talking about him, so they know what they're talking about.
I mean, how much of a benefit is it for you to have him on one side, maybe David Bailey coming off the other side in terms of your pass rush going into the year? Yeah,
that's what's going to be big, is how Coach Wood uses those two guys, because they are opposite. David's playing the field, and Romello's playing the boundary, and so we're going to be able to have them on the field. We actually have a couple different packages to where Romello plays a couple different spots, and I think that's the key is how Coach Wood is going to be able to use those guys.
All right, appreciate it. Joey McGuire, Texas Tech head coach, thrilled to be here at Big 12 Media Days.
Thank you, man.